This week, the war on fake news. When robots paint the moon. Flipping out over this. And how to make a shooting star. The world's largest election is underway in India. Over 5 weeks, 900 million eligible voters in 20 states are casting their ballots to decide who will rule this vast country for the next 5 years. And this is no small decision because in that time, India's population is set to overtake China's, and its economy is likely to become bigger than the UK's. The size of this democratic exercise is like no other, but the issues that it brings up are all too familiar. Social media, once again, is playing a part in swaying political opinions. And, once again, misinformation, so-called fake news, is attempting to cloud voters' judgment. And the problem is, last year, BBC-led research revealed that ordinary citizens in India are less concerned with the facts of a story, and they're more likely to share it if it bolsters their national identity. The problem is now as acute on WhatsApp as it is on Facebook, and when messages come from family and friends, the receivers are more likely to believe it and to share it. India's Election Commission has been working with social media giants to try and stop the toxic overspill. And David Reed has been finding out if they've been successful.
Fake news foxes the best of us. In India, it has a particular potency.
I got information from social media like WhatsApp, Facebook, news channels.
Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram.
Last year, more than 30 people died after false social media rumours triggered mob violence. This NGO stepped in to counter its effects. The explosion of mobile internet here has been a cultural earthquake. People easily believe fiery fake news and underestimate the effect of sharing it.
India is certainly a country which comes under these 4 things like follow, share, forward, like. Misinformation is catchy, misinformation is alarming, misinformation is like negative news, which is very, very attractive. We don't feel, bad about forwarding it without realizing how a forward can impact people.
Follow, share, forward, like. At election time, fiery rhetoric linked to identity does all of these things. And there are politicians here who are happy to foment communal tensions. It's why the Election Commission has been so worried about fake news hijacking the democratic process and is asking social media giants to clamp down. WhatsApp introduced rationing, limiting to 5 the number of contacts users can share content with. As for Facebook, it's smarting from a series of fake news and data scandals. India's election is the big test. It pulled hundreds of fake accounts and announced a war room to crisis manage the election. We asked to see it and were eventually told it wasn't in India, where the election is, but in San Francisco, where Facebook is. Our reporter who visited it said the war room had a cobbled together feel to it.
The fact that we set up these operation centers, that we had the right capabilities in this room, where we had threat investigators, data scientists, engineers, meant that we had the appropriate expertise so we could respond rapidly when it mattered the most.
Back in India, Facebook has recruited an army of independent fact-checkers. The startup News Mobile employs a new breed of journo. They're certified by the International Fact-Checking Network. Their job to review flagged stories, rate their accuracy, and push out a corrective.
This is a global epidemic and requires a global response. For every social media company globally, it's the fake news problem creates a crisis of credibility as well. So for them, it's incumbent upon them as well to work more deeply, especially with independent media companies.
By all accounts, the fact checkers are doing a terrific job. The problem is there's just so much fake news for them to deal with. Added to that, fact checking is real journalism. It takes time. For all the time that it takes, the full story is online, doing its damage.
By the time a fact checker pushes out an article, fact checks something, it's already 24 to 48 hours since the misinformation has been posted on the platform. And the misinformation by that time has more or less reached the intended audience. And Facebook has no way of informing the people who have viewed the misinformation that, look, there's a fact check corresponding to that.
Once a story is found to be fake, it doesn't then disappear. Sure, it's contextualized by the fact checker's work and it's made less prominent. Its viral wings are clipped, but it remains up there. There is, however, a category of misinformation that Facebook does take down.
In particular cases where we see that misinformation violates our community standards and essentially coordinates harm. A good example of this, just to anchor the conversation, is misinformation that misleads people about the process of how to vote or the logistics of when to vote. That aspect of misinformation is particularly dangerous, and so as a result, we actually do remove it from our platform.
Today, she's a little serious.
For all the drawbacks to fact-checking, it does seem to be educating people to be more skeptical.
Or did you just forward it?
I just received it on some random group.
And made him
84 million new voters have come of age since the last election. So is the social media generation wising up to the wiles of the fake newsers?
Be like Kavya. Share joy, not rumors.
So I think first we need to check it all and then we have to decide that it's fake or true.
My idea is if you're not informative about something, it's better not to say spread rumors around that.
Fake news is imagined to have most impact in knife-edge constituencies where the vote is close. After the elections will be the reckoning. Then we'll see how well social media outfits have done at curbing activists and their desire to trick unwitting voters.
That was David Reed in India. With me is Will Moy from Full Fact, an independent fact-checking charity here in the UK. And Will, you've started working with Facebook to fact-check their articles recently, haven't you?
That's right. They came to us last year. We spent a few months talking about how that would work, how we would maintain our independence.
So when we're talking about democratic votes like the one that's going on in India right now, I can see a future where whoever loses the election will now be able to blame fake news as much as maybe more than anything else. Is that the future that we're destined for, do you think?
I think it's the past we've already lived in. I think people have always complained that the election was rigged and it wasn't fair for one reason or another, the newspapers are biased, whatever it might be. There's always been those complaints. What's true now that didn't used to be true is that a small group of people can control communications to millions of other people that their opponents can't see. So with targeted online advertising now, it's possible to advertise to millions of people, but only a selected group of people. You can advertise just to men with one message and just to women with another message, or an even more, sometimes quite sinister, targeted groups of people. That has to be made transparent, or we really will have a problem with an election where people can say this all happened surreptitiously in the dark without scrutiny. And if an election is not a shared experience, it ceases to be truly a democratic experience.
In India especially, there's a lot of sharing going on WhatsApp. Now that's not public. Everything happens inside private, encrypted groups. How on earth can you fact check WhatsApp groups and what they're sharing?
Oh, we don't know yet. It's something that people in my line of work talk to each other about, and it's a concern. We were pleased that WhatsApp made the move to reduce how easy it is to forward information on WhatsApp, because that can make dangerous information go viral with too little scrutiny. But actually it is going to come down to individual users of WhatsApp and every other messaging platform saying, I don't want to share things with my friends that I think might not be true. Because no one actually wants to mislead their friends.
But it seems to me human nature that we want to share sensational sounding information, and that's been true before social media as well. That's just not going to stop, is it?
It's not going to stop, no. But equally, pub conversations for the last 100 years have not all been completely accurate. People have told nonsense at the market, nonsense at the pub, nonsense around the kitchen table for generations. It's not necessary to create a world in which nobody says anything that's inaccurate or sensationalized. What we need to do is spot where it's causing harm and then ask people to think twice and say, actually, if you're sharing information about how to vote but you're not sure that it's right, that's the point at which you need to stop and think before you share.
Do you think Facebook and other social media platforms are doing enough at the moment to counter misinformation?
No, we don't. We think that they have now started to take some serious and useful steps forward, but actually they need to do more. They need to be changing the product so that it makes it easier for people to work out what they can and cannot trust. We need to see more research, more independent research into where problems are and what harms really arise from them. We need more data sharing. And with the program that Facebook came to us with recently, they started for the first time to give outsiders an insight into what's going on in the platform. They started to integrate fact-checking into the product. That is a decent first step, but it is not the last.
Thank you very much for your time, Will.
Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. This week, Apple settled its chip royalty dispute with Qualcomm, sending the chip maker's stock rocketing up. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey said it's time to fundamentally rethink how his service is used, comparing himself to the captain of the Titanic. And after nearly 5 years of development, PlayStation announced plans for its next-generation console. It will be backwards compatible with the PS4 and have 8K resolution. An investigation by the consumer magazine Which has found the Amazon online store has been flooded with thousands of products with fake 5-star reviews. Which looked at 14 popular tech items, including headphones and smartwatches, finding unknown brands also appearing in the top of the search. Amazon says it's using automated technology to weed out false reviews. Uber launched a feature in Saudi Arabia that allows female drivers to block male passengers from hailing their cab. Uber discovered up to 75% of female drivers didn't want to pick up male passengers. Women have only been allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia since last summer. Alibaba's CEO Jack Ma has defended the culture of working long hours at tech companies, saying it's a blessing for workers to put in a 72-hour work week. The so-called 996 work culture, working 9 till 9, 6 days a week, was highlighted by Chinese tech workers online. And finally, in the latest sign of the impending robot takeover, Boston Dynamics showed off its robo-dogs pulling a truck across a parking lot. The 30-kilogram robot dogs will go on sale later this year.
At this London gallery, art created by a robot using artificial intelligence is on show.
These images are a very modern take on the traditional Chinese ink landscape paintings. They're created by using a combination of NASA data, images that have been collected by the Chinese rover on the moon, and a human who has taught the AI to create brushstrokes that look like this.
AI Genesis will never create the same image twice, and its inventor, who calls the robot his soulmate, sees that as one of the joys.
When you look at the picture, do you feel pleased with it? Do you question the way it's come out? How do you feel when you first see it?
I feel amazed. Wow, that's my expression. Wow. If I draw myself like this, I will be punished by my ink painting master, because that's not the way that they train traditional ink painting. But why not? What's why not? That? I mean, no. I mean, they will not draw that way. That is not a traditional techniques on Chinese ink painting. But the new art ink paintings, what we want to do is to put some new things into traditional ink paintings to renew it or
You've certainly done that.
Yes.
So who's a better painter, you or the robot?
Well, I would say it's a collaboration between us, and also it's so embarrassing sometimes because should I say, oh, look at my paintings, or look at our paintings.
But if the creation of an image comes down to data, numbers, algorithms, is it maybe missing something?
Each piece of art that's created normally has a person's emotions, a person's thought, a person's vision put into it. But when you're leaving the AI to do a lot of that, is it still art?
Well, first of all, what is emotions? Emotion is our response to the environment. Like in rainy days, you will feel blue. In sunny days, you might feel future is so bright, right there, right? If I put some data to stimulate Gemini's work, to alter it by some extra stimulations of like surroundings. For example, I put humidities and temperatures. Every time it's come out different. I would say there's emotion emulations at this moment. But no one can say that AI will not have emotions or imaginations in the future.
And the idea does seem to be gaining ground. A piece of AI art was for the first time sold at auction last month at London Sotheby's. Artist Mario Klingman's Memories of Passers-by 1 was created using what's known as Generative Adversarial Networks, or GANs. These break down the data from traditional oil portraits, rebuilding it into a series of unique images.
What you see there, I built myself. But yeah, like a painter doesn't build their brushes themselves, or let's say goes in a store to buy paint or canvas. I'm working with materials that I'm standing on the shoulders of kind of a generation of researchers.
But the intention here was quite deliberately neither to achieve perfection nor photorealism.
The first 2,000 then and selling now for £32,000.
It was actually the code that was bought here, with a couple of screens and a wooden unit thrown in to enjoy it on. So maybe the future of appreciation of art is one of appreciation of technology too.
That was Lara. Now we're going to talk phones. And I have to say, as a geek, I have been waiting a long time to be able to do this. The idea of a flexible display has been around for years, and on Click we've watched this story unfold. But these things have been an awfully long time coming. We've had to wait for OLED technology, which allows for flexible electronics to get to a point where it's cheap enough and reliable enough to survive being bent, flexed and mistreated in the real world. And this year, finally, several companies have been able to roll them out. The highest profile flexible phone has to be Samsung's Galaxy Fold, which becomes available at the beginning of next month. For £1,800. Now, the front screen is smaller and narrower than you might be used to, but this device is really all about the 7.3-inch tablet screen hiding inside. You can just about see that crease down the centre, although it's less obvious when the screen is bright. On opening or closing, any apps running on one screen will switch immediately to the other in an adjusted size. That bigger screen does allow for 3 apps to be open at once, which you can reposition or pop out into floating windows. So this is the first time that journalists have been allowed to touch the thing, and to be honest, I came down here today expecting for this to weigh an absolute ton, but I have to say it doesn't. I mean, it's heavier than the S10 Plus, but it's lighter than an iPad mini, so, you know, depends on your perspective, really. Now, about that screen. See, it doesn't fold completely flat, which has caused some to worry that a stray coin in your pocket could sneak into the gap and cause all sorts of screen damage. And despite Samsung's claims that it can take up to 200,000 folds, some reviewers have already experienced unexplained faults with the screen. Samsung says it's looking into it, but it's not exactly the best start for what's supposed to be a whole new type of device. Now then, I wonder if you've ever seen a shooting star. If you're lucky, you might see a few of them in your lifetime, but what if you could control where and when they happen? That would be pretty spectacular, wouldn't it? Well, Kate Russell has been to Japan to meet the scientists who are trying to take control of the night sky.
3, 2, 1, go.
Whoa. It's not often you can get this close to a shooting star.
Oh, that one's green.
This simulation of a meteor being burned up in Earth's atmosphere is part of an ambitious plan to create cosmic-grade fireworks that can be seen from up to 200 kilometres away.
Since we last visited the company back in 2016, they've been perfecting the technology to make it compact enough to allow it to be sent into space. Hitching a ride on a rocket isn't cheap, so every gram counts.
Many shooting stars ordinary, basically like sesame size, and this is bigger than that natural shooting stars. And this is completely burned out upper atmosphere. So, and it's become very bright and last longer.
It's going to take a year before the satellite descends to an orbit where they've been cleared by the world's space agencies to eject the pellets.
So the particles sit inside this cylinder and they get rotated one at a time into this chamber here, down inside here, but in this central chamber. Right. Then we put pressure behind them right here and we release them and they get shot right out of here.
Ah, okay. So poof, poof, poof.
Yep, one at a time. Because the release velocity is the #1 most critical factor in ensuring accuracy of the particles, there is no system on Earth that is currently accurate enough.
The company is being secretive about the date for the first shooting star display, but it doesn't take a genius to work out that the timings set things up rather nicely for the 2020 Olympics. In future, they hope to offer multicolour displays too.
So this is one of the materials that's going to be tested today, just mounted on the tip of this stick. We're not quite sure how it's going to burn, what colour it's going to be, what brightness, but that's the point of these tests.
It promises to look spectacular, but there is real science at stake here too.
Right now, meteor science is not well known. It's a wide field of research, and specialist scientists, they don't know the mass, they don't know the brightness, they don't know the composition of meteors, and they don't know if it led to the spread of life on Earth.
Because we have such an accurate system, we can tell scientists and our own crews exactly where to point the cameras so that they can record the events and get data.
It's not so surprising to connect fireworks to scientific breakthroughs. Around 2,000 years ago, alchemists seeking a recipe for eternal life accidentally created firecrackers. This led to our first fundamental understanding of the forces of nature. So, this could mark the beginning of a new chapter of scientific study. It's also going to look very pretty.
Brilliant. That was Kate in Japan, and that's it from us for this week. You can follow us on social media throughout the week. We live on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at BBC Click. Thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.